Right, so for those of you waiting for the bigger iMac Pro, I have some bad news for you because according to Dylan DKT on Twitter, the bigger iMac won't be launching this year, but I also have more bad news regarding Face ID on the Mac and how it's also not launching anytime soon. So yes, let's delve into all this bad news, but first, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumors. And with that being said, let's just tuck in. Right, so beginning with the release of the bigger iMac, obviously Mark Gurman has hinted at this in the past because he has said that number one, the bigger iMac's development was temporarily paused to focus on the 24-inch iMac, but also he did say there is a chance we could see the M2X in the next iMac instead of the M1X, and so that was hinting at a release that was a little later than expected since of course we don't even have M1X yet, so Apple won't be releasing M2X anytime soon. And well, Dylan DKT pretty much confirms this in a pretty straightforward tweet. He says the bigger iMac is releasing in 2022. Now what's interesting is that Luke Miani chimes in and says he's heard about a release in October of next year. That's a long way away, and so let's delve into why we're going to see such a massive delay with the release of the bigger iMac. Now the main reason I can think of is mini LED supply constraints. We know the bigger iMac is getting mini LED, and we also know that mini LED is facing production issues. That's why the MacBook Pros have been pushed back, and of course making 30-inch mini LED panels is even harder. So yes, I can see the supply issues for mini LED being a reason behind the delay of the bigger iMac. Another reason is, much like I said before, Apple did temporarily pause on development of the larger iMac, and so I'm sure that pushed back the release ever so slightly too. But another factor to consider that Dylan mentions is that Apple does not want products fighting for attention, and of course spacing out the releases gives them multiple waves of coverage covering each product in extensive detail. I mean, imagine if Apple released the iMac Pro with the MacBook Pro. That's two massive releases that are gonna be fighting for attention and ultimately won't get the coverage they need. So yes, I think spacing out the releases does make a lot more sense, and so even if they could release the iMac Pro early, I think it's best to give the MacBook Pro some breathing space and some press attention before they move on to the iMac Pro. So yes, all those reasons justify the delay, but let's now delve into the specific time frame we should see the bigger iMac. So yes, I know I previously mentioned that Luke Miani believes we're gonna see the bigger iMac in October, but this I find a little hard to believe because Tim Cook did say at WWDC 2020 that the transition would be over by 2 years from that point, and so that means we should see all the Apple Silicon Macs by WWDC 2022, and so of course October is a little later than that. But at the same time, some may argue that Tim did not know that mini LED issues would be this bad in 2021, and of course we were supposed to get new MacBook Pros at WWDC, and so because they got pushed back, the whole timeline has been affected. And so yes, maybe Apple does not stick to their original plan, and we do see this bigger iMac as late as October. Now it is possible we could see a preview of the bigger iMac at WWDC, and then of course it releases at the end of the year. That's what happened with the iMac Pro and the Mac Pro, so I can see this happening to the Apple Silicon iMac Pro too. So yeah, on the whole, the release has been pushed back sadly, but what does this mean for the feature set of the bigger iMac? Well, the main change is the M2X, because obviously the M1X by the time the iMac Pro releases is gonna be pretty old, and so the bigger iMac is gonna skip on M1X and transition over to M2X. Now as for the differences between M2X and M1X, well, I think they're gonna share the same basic layout, so 8 performance cores and 2 efficiency cores, but since M2X should be based on a 15 cores compared to M1X, that's based on a 14 cores, we could see a slightly higher clock speed for the actual cores themselves, which should offer a pretty decent performance boost. But I do want to say the bigger iMac will have a much larger thermal envelope compared to the MacBook Pros, and so there's a chance we could see Apple give the iMac more power cores and more GPU cores. So for example, the MacBook Pro is expected to have a choice of either 16 or 32 GPU cores, and well, we could see 64 GPU cores on the iMac Pro with more power cores, so maybe 10 to 12 instead of 8 on the MacBooks. That would be pretty insane. So yes, I would expect a slightly higher end version of the iMac Pro to be available for those who want the absolute best performance available. Anyways, moving on to Face ID on the Mac. We've been hearing about this for some time. In fact, the 24-inch iMac was supposed to come with Face ID built in, but apparently got delayed. And now Mark Gurman says that it won't be releasing anytime soon. More specifically, he says it's going to take a couple of years, so yes, we may see Face ID on the second or third generation of Apple Silicon Macs, but definitely not on the M2X iMac Pro or the M1X MacBook Pro that should be launching very soon. As I've said before, I think Face ID on the iMac makes a ton of sense because obviously the biggest issue with Face ID right now is the fact we wear face coverings outside, and so of course that prevents Face ID from working on the iPhone, but that won't be the case with the iMac since obviously no sane person carries their iMac around with them. But I can't lie, I have seen images of people trying to do this, but anyways, most of us leave our iMacs on the desk, and so yes, Face ID indoors would be perfect for the iMac. Another thing that could come out of the delay for the larger iMac is a new design, because we all know the 24-inch iMac had a pretty polarizing reception. Some hate it, some like it, and so maybe Apple's gonna go back to the drawing boards and instead gives us a safer Pro design with either a smaller chin or maybe no chin at all. I think a lot of prosumers would prefer the latter, so yes, maybe Apple does consider that design for the iMac Pro. Personally, my dream iMac would be a massive iPad Pro on a stick. That would look amazing, and so I am still hoping the iMac Pro's design drastically changes because I'm still pretty mixed on the 24-inch iMac's design. So yeah, that's pretty much everything regarding the larger iMac, but let me know in the comments below, are you going to wait for the larger iMac or can you not wait? And are you going to get a MacBook Pro with a monitor instead? Anyways, thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumors. Check out the video in the icon above on details regarding the iPad mini 6. And on that note, I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya, peeps.